I love this tweet from Michael Ian Black. He wrote, "Be funny if King Charles died the next week." Not that anybody wants anyone to die, but it'd be funny if King Charles died the next week or so, and then everybody was like, "We have to do this again?" And they'd be also resentful. Also, they'd have to tell the bees again, and how much can the bees be expected to take? Joe Biden was on 60 Minutes. Stephen Colbert said maybe he prematurely declared that the pandemic is over, which marks the first time that Joe Biden has ever moved too fast. Seth Meyers went with, "Easy for him to say, he just had it. Of course it's over when you've got the antibodies. I'm off to Burning Man, then London for the Queen's funeral. No masks, baby." Tim Allen caught some grief for a lame tweet. Never mind the politics of it. His tweet, "Biden was on 60 Minutes. I heard him ask how long the show was." That's an awful, like a fourth grader comes up with that, man. Tim Allen was zinged by several people on the internet. Ad writer Cliff Schechter answered Tim Allen's tweet. How long was the show? 145 minutes. That's how long the new Buzz Lightyear movie was. Perhaps you've seen it. Oh, I wanted to talk about fun TV shows, but the big news of the day, and it's confusing, is from the AV Club. The siblings who accused comedians Tiffany Haddish and Aries of, quote, intentional infliction of emotional distress, gross negligence, sexual battery, sexual harassment, and sexual abuse of a minor in a lawsuit earlier this month, they've dropped their complaint and filed for a dismissal with prejudice, meaning that the matter is fully resolved and cannot be refiled. One of the siblings, identified only as Jane Doe, released the following statement via Deadline. That statement, "My family and I have known Tiffany Haddish for many years, and now we know that she would never harm me or my brother or help anyone else do anything that could harm us. We wish Tiffany the best and are glad that we can all put this behind us." I'm not going to editorialize on any of that. Let's just let that sit. Didn't expect that story to resolve that way. Switching to the fun. I watched Reboot. That is the show on Hulu starring Mac Packer, Keegan-Michael Key. I love it. I am evangelizing for it. If you were a personal friend on Tuesday night, you were getting texts from me that said, watch Reboot. It is fun. It's one of those shows you can tell in the first 20 seconds that, oh, this is really good. The cast is excellent. Mac Packer, Keegan-Michael Key, always great. Judy Greer, great. Whoever the actor is that plays the grown-up kid is great. Paul Reiser really bringing it in the show. The guy who plays boss at Hulu is good. Various Hulu executives are good. Johnny Knoxville, fantastic. I laughed out loud several times, and I've talked on this podcast about how I don't always do that. Let's not get into that today. Reboot is really strong. There are 3 episodes up on Hulu. I watched the first 2. Why didn't you watch all 3? I wanted to save it and watch 2 of them next week. So they didn't just do a Netflix style, here's 10 episodes. They only released 3. But the first 2, amazing. So go watch Reboot. I also watched Patton Oswalt's special. Several thoughts there. 1, I stand by the comments I made in yesterday's podcast. I don't think Patton Oswalt was stealing from Louis C.K., but I do see some similarities between the bits. I see more of a similarity between the way Vulture recapped the bit than the way Patton performed it, so I don't think it's a rip-off bit at all, but they're on the same corner, those 2 bits. You can listen to yesterday's podcast for my comments on that. I think Vulture nailed capital N, their review. The special feels incomplete was the word they used. In the middle of it, Patton does 10 minutes of crowd work, and it's not great crowd work. It's very strange. Like sometimes you'll go to the crowd and you'll just get gold. And this was okay crowd work. Like, hey, Patton Oswalt showed up at the Chuckle Hut on Tuesday night and worked the crowd, and he was amusing. Like it wasn't like Netflix special crowd work. I thought the special was okay. The opener is really strong. Again, Vulture's review nailed it. But once I got into it, there was one point I caught myself. I was on Twitter and I was just scrolling and I realized, oh, I have 100% zoned out on this special. I don't know where we are. That's not good. I like Patton a lot, but this special, I don't know. I don't know where that's going to make the best of 2022 list, if at all. Reboot is definitely going to be very high on the list. We're a week and change away from the season premiere of Saturday Night Live. We now know the guest host and musical guest. October 1st, Miles Teller is your host and musical guest, Kendrick Lamar. October 8th, Brendan Gleeson is the host and musical guest, Willow. And then October 15th, Megan Thee Stallion doubles up as your guest host and the musical guest. John Oliver was on with Seth Meyers and talked about how a joke he made about Queen Elizabeth's death was censored in the UK. Oliver said, "It wasn't really a joke, barely had the premise, but all I said is that Britain is still mourning the shocking loss of a 96-year-old woman from natural causes. It's literally not a joke. Scientifically, it's not a joke. That's just a fact with a kind of jerky inflection. That's all it is." And they cut it out, which is pretty crap because apparently all we've heard this week is the Queen had an incredible sense of humor, just nonstop told she was so funny that she was so funny. The Queen, she was razor sharp. She dreamt of going to the Del Close Marathon. Big comedy fan. The Del Close Marathon is a 24-hour improv marathon held by the UCB Theater, so that is a deep dive there. The Queen was razor sharp. She dreamt of going to the Del Close Marathon. Big comedy fan. Seth said, "I will say I've watched a lot of anecdotes, people saying, yeah, she was so funny, and they tell you a story, and when it ends, you go, I don't know." Oliver said, "Or that clip where she was with Paddington. I'm watching a bear carry her comedically in that scene. She's giving that bear nothing back. That's one set of footprints in the sand, and it's a paw." But she was a huge comedy fan. Today's Daily Comedy News brought to you by the new podcast, The Shows We Watched. I dropped an episode of that in the feed. It's the episode before this one if you want to check out a full episode of The Shows We Watched. Or why don't you go to their feed and follow The Shows We Watched. Johnny Mac, I don't know what it is. What is it? Tell me. Each week, TV aficionados James King and Emily Johnston take us back to hang out with the best TV shows of all time. So it's like when you're hanging out with your friends and you go, "Hey, remember how we really loved show X?" And you talk about it for half an hour, and at the end of the half an hour, you feel really good about the conversation you just had. It's that in podcast form. James and Emily take us back. We hang out with the best TV shows of all time, from Sex and the City to Beavis and Butthead, Friends, Gossip Girl. This week's episode is Mad About You. New shows every Tuesday. It's funny and nostalgic. The Shows We Watched, wherever you get your shows. Just for Laughs Toronto. I almost said Montreal. Nope. Just for Laughs Toronto kicks off today. I was hoping to get up there, but my schedule is not going to allow me to do it. I'm on the Toronto Just for Laughs website, and I like what they did here. Instead of having a bunch of boxes and having me have to do some jiu-jitsu to figure out the schedule, they've now changed the schedule to a timeline. Loving this. All right. If you're relatively new to the show, and I'll be doing this for the next week or so, I like to take a look at the schedule. I tell you who's playing, and then I go back a second time and say, all right, if you and I were there, here would be my recommendations. What I really like about the timeline is I can look at it more easily and not block myself out because I can also see when things end. All right, 6:30, Alex Edelman. 7 o'clock, Atsuko Atsaka. She's got The Intruder. She's pretty much doing every night. Ali Hassan's Just a Taste. 7 o'clock, Lori Kilmartin. Then at 8 o'clock, some of the shows include Dino Archie and John Mulaney. Have you heard of him? 8:30 is Absolute Comedy. The 9 o'clock shows Todd Barry, Kurt Braunohler, Mark Little, Sophie Buttle. Los Spookies at 9:30. Marito Lopez at 10. The Late Show's Alternative Show, Late Night Surprise, and Dino Archie. Let's do it again. So you and I are hanging out in Toronto. I have done this festival. It is a great festival. All right, for the early shows, let's do Ali Hassan's Just a Taste. That's at the Rivoli from 7 to 8. I'm assuming we can travel at the speed of light here. I haven't mapped this out for geographical reality, but let's just play. So we're going to travel at the speed of light from Ollie's show, and we're going to catch the 8 o'clock John Mulaney show. That's budgeted at an hour. That's a short show for Mulaney, and apparently no opener. Maybe it runs a little more. So then at 9 o'clock, let's see, Todd Barry, Kurt Braunohler. I might have already recorded Saturday and decided to go see Todd Barry sometime in the future. Let's go see Kurt Braunohler at 9 o'clock. Now we're loose at 10. There's something called Pre-Game Comedy. Let's see what this is. Start your weekend with a laugh. It's our friends and favorite show featuring a lineup of local acts curated by the owner of the club. Yeah, let's do that. One of my best pieces of advice for a comedy festival is you want to see the smaller shows. Like, yes, I just said let's go see John Mulaney because that's how it fit on the schedule. Otherwise, we're just sitting around at 8 o'clock. But you want to see the smaller shows in the clubs to really get a sense of who the up-and-comers are. So let's do Nothing Fancy at 10 o'clock. And then let's hit Late Night Surprise at 11. Let's see what's on Late Night Surprise. Who doesn't love a spot-on show title? Late Night Surprise is exactly that, a late-night show in an intimate venue with a surprise lineup that changes every night. Love it. Let's do that. So that's JFL Toronto. The Teterboro Examiner wrote 5 Toronto comedians to check out during Just for Laughs. Perfect. They are Juliana Rodriguez. She's a brilliant stand-up comic and prolific joke writer with a sardonic wit. She's open for Whitney Cummings. They write, she's so incredibly comfortable on stage, it always feels like Juliana has the home turf. Hisham Kaladi is a first-rate storyteller. When he does stand-up, it feels like my friend telling me a story. I'm completely invested. I don't want it to end. Please don't get to a punchline. It's already funny, and I want you to stay. Courtney Gilmore has so many accolades. She was a top 8 finalist on Canada's Got Talent. She has a huge following on TikTok, and she's just recorded an album. Mike Rita is an incredible natural. You're instantly transported to his living room, smoking a joint, listening to a hilarious story. And Mark Little, and the writer here says, I misquote Mark's jokes to my friends all the time. He brings joy and play to his comedy. I get excited to see him tell my favorite joke, but also enjoy the unexpected magic that seems to unfold every set he does. Vulture has their list of comics to watch. Let's take a look at Claire O'Kane. She was hired as a writer at SNL for its 47th season. That was last season. I can't look that up. O'Kane's stand-up is a fantastic illustration of what makes her distinctive. In a joke for Comedy Central, which she includes in her 2018 album Let It Be, she describes her love of going to pee-pee, which she eventually clarifies as Planned Parenthood. The joke slides in a few different directions, skirting around some of the most direct abortion access material and landing instead on O'Kane's ability to describe her physical ailments in medically accurate terms. It's not that she needed an abortion or that she loves Planned Parenthood or even her relationship with a bassist. It's that the bassist had a booger wall, which O'Kane takes great pleasure in describing. Her sensibility is messy, which sometimes manifests as physical grossness and sometimes is about going just a tad too far. Best comedy advice, worst comedy advice, best. I heard someone once talk about how there's absolutely no way every single person in every single audience you perform will like you, in the same way that out in the world, not everybody will like you. So remember that and realize all you can do is be yourself. Worst advice, somebody told her, you should never say that you bombed. Like if someone asks, how'd your set go? You should go, went great, I killed. Because then people hear it and go, wow, you must be good. But to me, that's weird. Once you start lying to people like that, you start believing the lies yourself and become someone you're not, all for the sake of success. If that works for you, God bless, but I can't live like that. I want people to know that I bombed. I want people to know I'm not perfect. Anyway, the guy that gave that advice is pretty successful now, so that's cool. And that's your comedy news for today. Follow the show for free on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you get your shows. See you tomorrow.